everyone. This is Dee Marley at the History Bards podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have Nicolette Croft on the show today. She is one of our newest authors with Historium Press, and her debut book, The Curse of Maiden Scars, just came out, and we are excited for everybody. Let me see if everybody can see that better. We're excited for everybody to go out and get this book because it's phenomenal, and we would love. It's very like we said in the blurb. If you love Lady Chatterley's Lover or the Madwoman's Ball, please go out and get this. But we want to get to know Nicolette, and we are thrilled to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Nicolette is from a family of storytellers from her bio. So we would love for you to tell us a little bit more about that and how that led you to seeking out to write in historical fiction.
Okay, so I'm both American and Hungarian.
Okay.
And my mom came to the United States after World War II during like the displaced persons.
Right.
And I would hear stories about how she grew up and how my grandparents grew up. And then on my American side, they're kind of traditional, like German immigrants and kind of traveling across America from Kentucky to Montana.
Yeah.
And so much of it was like oral storytelling and like the family, where we come from. And it's the value system that kept getting passed down. And so it's just how I grew up from being very, very little.
Yeah. Your bio says that you had previous like experience in writing and journalism and what was the short fiction? Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about that, about kind of like your journey into writing?
Yeah. So I have an English degree. And so after college, my first job was at a weekly newspaper. And I absolutely love that because it was research, writing, layout, editing, photography. And so the process became very much my own and it was personal. And then about 10, 15 years ago, I wrote a novel. And as it is trying to get things traditionally published, it was a learning process, but I had snippets of that were then turned into short fiction, a short story and a poem. So.
Oh, that's really nice. So you can always see how like the journey is kind of a long journey, and a lot of people who are first getting into writing historical fiction or writing any kind of fiction actually, sometimes don't understand the process because they think that it goes pretty fast.
Mm-mm.
So it's certainly a learning curve, isn't it?
Absolutely. And kind of finding, how I want to tell a story. And my first story was told in third person specific, and then this one is in first person.
Right.
And it took a little more digging because it's intimate to be able to say, okay, I'm going to really connect with my character in this way and, kind of share that interiority and vulnerability. So it took a little longer in editing it to say, okay.
Yes, it does. It definitely does. And try not to head hop whenever you're so focused on first person. Yeah, that's a challenge. It really is. Well, you did it very well. Can
Thank
you
you.
tell our listeners a little bit more about the story?
Yeah, so I got the idea because since my mom's European, we travel a lot. And I was in Venice and I love the architecture. I love just the evolution of that culture. And it was a small little tidbit that talked about how Napoleon took over Venice in 4 days. And it became fascinating to me that this empire could fall, this 1,000-year empire could fall so quickly.
Yeah.
And I was curious about like what kind of character would appreciate understanding like drastic change. And my day job is as a mental health professional, and this is a ripe time period for mental health. And so, what better than a young woman who's been exposed to some difficult times? And so, kind of started at the end and then found its beginning.
Yeah, and she definitely goes through so much.
So
And
much.
I think one of the things that you really revealed in the story is the challenges of women at that time, young women at that time, and how sometimes they were thrust into situations that they had no control over. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you really portrayed that very well.
Thank you.
And then it kind of leading her into a way of life that she didn't want,
Mm-hmm.
and yet she was trying to find her identity. I think all of that just melded together so beautifully.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, so for those of you out there listening, to be able to find a book like this that really delves into women's issues back then,
Hmm.
and it's very relevant,
Hmm.
even for today. So let me ask you this: in your research, can you tell us about the process, about how you go about in your research and finding those little tidbits, and maybe you found something really obscure that you can share with us?
So the majority of this book is, mental health as
Yeah.
well as, difficulty, physically.
Yes.
And so, one of the things that happens to her later in the book is she gets sick with a illness that only modern medicine could really cure.
Right.
And so I wanted to explore, like, how would that have been treated during that time period?
Mhm.
And would there have been any kind of treatment? Because unfortunately, the illness typically would have been fatal. And so it just takes a lot of digging and being able to explore to say, okay, what other medicine was out there, Western medicine, but understanding the overlap of kind of the archaic, which is a little barbaric. And so,
Yes.
I have many, many texts, and then, whether it's nonfiction or medicine or primary research as much as I can.
Yeah, I think a lot of historical authors, it's always funny whenever you talk about the things that you look up on Google. You know,
Yeah,
if anybody was to search your research, they'd be like, what in the world is going on?"
absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about your experience and why you chose to sign with Historium Press? Because we really do appreciate it, and we're really looking for a huge success with this book.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be with Historium Press. So like a lot of debut novelists, pursuing the traditional publishing route with, an agent. And so I finished the novel for the most part, probably 3.5 years ago during
Yes.
COVID.
Mhm.
And, attending writers' conferences or getting feedback from agents, several, beta readers. And I think I must have at least 115 rejections. And so about it'll be 3 years ago in July. I did have signed with an agent, and he held the project for a year. And what I found was that historical fiction is so narrow. And this is definitely a little bit more of a women's fiction with a historical setting. And it
Yes.
just wasn't a good match. And in reclaiming, this project was really liberating for me,
Yes.
because going back to like work with the newspaper, it's really beautiful to take it like from beginning to end. And I learned that with a traditional process, I may not have as many rights
That's
or as
exactly
much
right.
voice in that project.
Yes.
And so coming on with Historian Press has just been thrilling because you're diligent and caring, and the product is it's more than I could have hoped for.
Oh, that's wonderful that you feel that way, and thank you for that, because that is our goal, to give you a voice. I've told authors before that that was my experience, and I didn't feel like I wanted that taken away from me. I didn't
Hmm.
want my voice taken away. I didn't want it changed to something that in my head for all these years was a certain way. And so to
Hmm.
be able to turn around and give that back, to authors is our goal. And we
Hmm.
really appreciate that you're happy and that we're going to move forward with this, and it's going to be great. And we want everybody to go out there and get it. We are looking for ARC readers right now. So if anybody sees this and they want to be an ARC reader, just reach out to us. But in all of that, so I want to kind of get into a little bit about how you feel about reviews and how you feel about maybe even advice about to new authors, because lots of times getting bad reviews or getting negative reviews hurts, especially if you're a new author. So how do you feel like that you could help, or even with yourself, approach that?
I think reviews are really important. It allows me as the writer to say, you know, how is this work landing with people?
Yes.
But I think it also has to be taken in context
Yes.
because, especially with this book, which talks about some sensitive topics.
Yeah,
It depends on what filter people bring to the table as they're reading this.
exactly.
And so I think to avoid is not wise. I think to take it in too deeply is also not wise.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And thank you so much for sharing that, because that's really, really super good advice. And
Mm,
sometimes you have to have a thick skin, but then at other times you have to take it with a measure of, a grain of salt, you know. So we really appreciate that. Well, let me ask you this. So, we are launching the book in June. So that's coming out, and it is on pre-order right now. So people can go and click the link. We're going to share the link in the description so that you can go out and buy the book. It's going to be in hardcover, paperback, and ebook, and I think she's working on
I
audiobook
am.
coming up. Yeah.
Yeah,
So how's that going? Are you having?
that is so exciting, actually,
Yes, it
because
is.
I love how you can narrow down for auditions, and so fingers crossed. I think I have a wonderful actor that I think will be on deck pretty soon.
Oh, that sounds great. That's so exciting whenever you can start hearing your characters' voices come to life.
Absolutely.
That's a very exciting thing. Well, thank you so much, Nicolette, for being on the show today. And again, we're going to put all of these links up in the description. And please tell our listeners about your website and where they can go and find out more about you and your books.
It's just nicolettecroft.com.
Okay.
And, I've got a blog on there where I'll write about things that are kind of important. So you'll learn a little bit more about me, and that I'm not, the traditional writer. I am actually dyslexic. And so it's taken a long path to kind of get to this place where, I feel like the writing reflects what I'm thinking and not necessarily any weird inversions. And so love to kind of share that process, and it's personal. It's very personal, and I'm excited to connect with my readers.
Well, that sounds really good. We'll definitely put that link up on the website as well, and on the this podcast whenever it posts. Thank you again for being on the show today.
Thanks a lot.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for listening at the History Bards podcast. Please go out and check out Nicolette's book and her links so you can learn more about her and her books. Again, this is Dee Marley at the History Bards podcast. Don't forget, keep making history and keep listening.